8 people were axed in their beds in Villisca, Iowa, 6 of them children. 114 years later, no one has ever been convicted. Whoever killed the Moore family had stayed in the house afterward, for hours, by investigators' estimates. Evidence in the attic indicated someone had lain there completely still, long after the last victim died. No one ever established what they were waiting for, or why they stayed at all. That single unanswered detail would haunt the investigation for over a century. Josiah B. Moore was one of the most recognizable faces in Villisca, Iowa, a town of about 2,500 people in the state's southwest corner. He ran his own implement dealership on the main street and was active in the local Presbyterian church. On the evening of Sunday, June 9, 1912, he took his wife Sarah and their 4 children to the church's annual Children's Day program. The evening seemed ordinary in every way. At the end of the evening, Josiah invited 2 sisters from a neighboring family to spend the night: Lena Stillinger, age 12, and Ina Stillinger, age 8. Their parents agreed. By around 10 o'clock, all 8 people were inside the Moore home at 508 East 2nd Street. The doors were locked and the lights went out. Sometime between midnight and early morning, someone entered the house. Forensic reconstruction suggests Josiah Moore was killed first, in the master bedroom, with his own single-bladed axe taken from a closet inside the home. Then Sarah, then the children, one room at a time, in sequence. All 8 were killed while they slept. By 8 o'clock the next morning, neighbor Mary Peckham noticed the Moore chickens had not been let out and that no one had appeared at the house. She called Josiah's brother Ross, who arrived with a spare key. Ross Moore unlocked the front door, stepped inside, and stopped. He did not go any further alone. Every victim had been covered after death, a bedsheet or blanket pulled deliberately over each face. Clothing had been draped across the bedroom windows to block outside light. In the hallway and the bedroom, every mirror in the house had been covered. None of that was how the family had left things the night before. In the kitchen, a kerosene lamp had been moved and set on the floor, and investigators found a basin of bloody water beside it. The killer had washed up before leaving. A cigarette butt had been wedged into the back door keyhole from the inside. Every lamp in the house had been wiped clean of fingerprints. The most disturbing detail came from the attic. Impressions in the dust showed that someone had lain there for an extended period. The only question was whether they hid before the murders or remained there quietly afterward. And beside one of the bedroom lamps, investigators found a 2-pound slab of raw, unwrapped bacon sitting on the floor. It did not belong to the family. No one could explain it. Word spread through Villisca within an hour of the discovery. Before law enforcement secured anything, more than 100 residents walked through the Moore home. Curious, horrified, some looking for relics. Footprints were obliterated and surfaces touched by dozens of hands. The crime scene was effectively destroyed before any trained investigator arrived. Iowa State Attorney General dispatched investigators within days. Among the first names that surfaced was Frank F. Jones, a state senator and prominent Villisca businessman who had once been Josiah Moore's employer. Moore had left Jones's firm in 1908 and opened a competing dealership directly across town, taking Jones's largest client with him. The rivalry had never fully cooled. Jones had hired a private detective named James Newton Wilkerson, who became convinced that Jones had arranged the murders. Wilkerson believed the actual killer was a man named William Mansfield, a drifter who traveled by rail across the Midwest and had been linked to at least one other axe killing of a sleeping family. Wilkerson spent years building the case against him. The parallel Wilkerson pointed to was difficult to dismiss. In 1914, Mansfield's own wife, infant child, and in-laws were found axed to death in their beds in another Midwest town, a crime that also went unsolved. The method mirrored Villisca, victims covered post-mortem, scene methodically cleaned, no witnesses. But prosecutors could never physically place Mansfield in Villisca on the night of June 9th. In 1916, a different suspect moved to the center of the investigation: Reverend George Kelly, a traveling English minister who had attended a church conference near Villisca and left town on the early morning train, a departure time that fell squarely within the estimated window of the murders. Kelly was quiet, itinerant, and his movements that night had never been fully accounted for. While in police custody, Kelly produced letters that appeared to be confessions, and he described details investigators had deliberately withheld from the public: the covered mirrors, the precise arrangement of the bodies, the position of the lamp. He called himself the Villisca Ripper and wrote that divine voices had commanded him to act. The specificity of his knowledge shook the investigators who read it. Kelly was tried twice in 1917. The first trial ended in a hung jury. In the second, his defense argued the confessions were the fantasies of a mentally unstable man, and that no physical evidence placed him inside the house. They were right about one thing: there was no physical evidence. The jury acquitted him. That acquittal exposed the core obstacle in every prosecution the case ever saw. The crime scene had been so thoroughly contaminated on the morning of discovery that no forensic evidence survived a courtroom challenge. Without usable physical proof, every case against every suspect collapsed under the weight of reasonable doubt, and reasonable doubt was all the defense ever needed. Modern forensic review of the original documentation reveals a killer who was strikingly controlled. The post-mortem covering of every face, the draped mirrors, the methodical wiping of lamps. None of it suggests frenzy. Forensic profilers note that covering victims' faces after death is rare and typically points to either a personal relationship with the dead or a compulsive ritual the killer felt driven to complete. The murder weapon, Josiah Moore's own axe, was recovered in the room where the Stillinger girls slept. But a second axe was also found inside the house, heavier, with a different blade profile, and belonging to no member of the Moore family. Investigators never established where it came from, who brought it, or why it was left behind. Villisca's mayor posted a $500 reward, roughly $16,000 in today's money, within days of the discovery. The Pinkerton National Detective Agency was engaged to investigate. Multiple grand juries were convened over the following years. Not one returned an indictment that led to a conviction. The most sustained modern case for a specific killer pointed to Mansfield. Researchers who spent decades in the original files concluded he was the most credible suspect. Methodical, mobile by rail, with a documented pattern of targeting sleeping families with an axe. Mansfield died without ever facing trial for Villisca, and whatever he knew about the night of June 9, 1912, he took it with him. The Moore home at 508 East 2nd Street still stands in Villisca. It has since been opened to the public as a historic site and museum. DNA analysis was attempted on surviving case materials, but no biological samples had remained usable after 9 decades. The official case was never formally closed. It was simply never resolved. What makes Villisca harder to treat as an isolated crime is the pattern surrounding it. Between 1909 and 1912, at least a dozen similar axe murders struck sleeping families across the American Midwest and South, in Colorado Springs, in San Antonio, in Ellsworth. In every case, victims covered post-mortem, no forced entry, no witnesses. None of those cases were solved either. Researchers who mapped those crime dates against period railroad schedules found that the locations follow major rail lines with a consistency that is difficult to dismiss as coincidence. The hypothesis of a single itinerant killer, one who traveled by train, concealed himself in victims' homes before striking, then boarded the first morning departure, fits the geographic record better than any alternative explanation ever proposed. 8 people entered the Moore home on the evening of June 9, 1912, and not one of them lived until morning. Josiah Moore, Sarah Moore, their children Herman, Mary, Arthur, and Paul, along with Lena and Ina Stillinger, were killed with precision and patience by someone who had planned the attack, concealed himself in the house, and left behind almost nothing to trace. The killer pulled a blanket over every face afterward, every face, including the children's. That was not rage. It took time. It was deliberate. Investigators have debated for over a century what that act reveals about who he was: remorse, ritual, or something else entirely. The case has no conviction, no confession that held, and no answer that everyone agrees on. What do you think that final act meant? Leave your theory in the comments.